Hello everyone. Today in this tutorial we're gonna talk about Sentinel special type while loop. We talk about Sentinel. Give you some options for application for task type of is a counter control. Okay, the difference. Sentinel will recap what we learned the last. Okay, here about text of while. Okay, before we study the syntax of Sentinel video or counter control while loop. Counter control while loop, as you know, it's a definite repetition loop. Why it's a definite repetition loop? Since the number of iterations is known before the loop begins to execute. In other words, we know the number of. Okay, if you want your task run 10 times, you will use a counter controlled while loop. As we said, the number of iteration for this loop is now. Okay. Now what if the number of iteration for your loop is unknown? You don't know in advance how many times the loop will be executed. In this case, the best way to implement this program or this task is to use Sentinel while loop. Okay, is to use Sentinel while loop. So Sentinel while loop, as a definition, is called an indefinite repetition loop. Okay, because because the number of iteration is not known before the loop start execution. Okay, if you wanted to summarize what we talk about, let's say you're gonna start typing the syntax of Sentinel while loop by using a keyword while, then you will write as the while loop in general, uh, but this condition this condition is number of iteration is unknown. How can you stop this loop? We can stop this loop by using a special value called Sentinel value. Okay. In a Sentinel control loop, a special value called Sentinel value is used to change the loop control expression from true to false. Okay, once you change this condition from true to false, your loop will be skipped or terminated. Let's try some example to to define more or to engage with using the Sentinel while loop. Suppose you need to enter or input several value, several integer value. Let's assume, let's say the variable x is the input variable, variable 10 times. And you need to input this variable 10 times. An integer. Okay. Scanf just for integer value and %d and x semicolon. The following statements we can put it in a body of while loop to be repeated 10 times. So you need a while loop here. Inside the body of this loop, you will write the following statement. Now, as we said before, in a counter-controlled while loop, you need to determine three things or three types. First, you need to initialize it and to initialize a counter to count number of iteration. Suppose your counter is variable c equal to 0, and c less than to 10. Repeat this loop 10 times. Before ending the body of while loop, you need to specify the step which is could be an increment counter or decrement counter. In our case here, the step will be C++ to increment the counter by 1. Here we have a new variable C. Let's declare it. C. This type of loop is called counter-controlled while loop. Okay, and if you run it, debug run, the following statement will be repeated 10 times. Integer and input. We will insert several input for 10 times. Once you finish inputting the 10 numbers, your program will be terminated. What if you want to run to input several value of x, but you don't know the number of iteration? In this case, as we said, we will use a Sentinel loop while loop. Okay, let's say your input, for example, your input is a user is trying to input a grade, for example. Okay, the grade value will be assigned to variable x. In this case, we don't need for a counter, since we don't know the number of iterations. Now, the challenge is here, how to specify the condition. Okay, in order to specify the condition, always in the Sentinel loop, your condition will be related for input value. You will specify your condition according to your input value, which is an X variable. So your condition will be, what is the Sentinel value for X variable? Here, the user is trying to import a grade. As we know, the grade is a positive number between 0 and 100. As a conclusion, we can say, for simplicity, your grade should be a positive number. Okay? So your condition will be X positive number. How we can specify X as a positive number? X greater than or equal. Okay? If this condition return a true value, the body of while loop, it will be executed. How many times this statements will be executed, I don't know. Okay, the number of iteration is unknown. Okay, let's try the following code. Start debugging. Yes. Input an integer. Okay, here we have an error. Okay, input your grade. Suppose I have a grade 65. Input another grade 78, 89, 25. So this loop is gonna be executed for several times, for infinite. How can we stop this loop? By using a sentinel value. Here in our example, the sentinel value is a negative number. So once you put a negative number, your program will be terminated. Let's say I will put -5. Once you input -5, your loop will be terminated. So -5 is not greater than or equal to 0. Therefore, this condition will return a false value. Thus, this body will be skipped. Finally, it will terminate your program. Okay. Someone can be used. You can use, instead of a positive number, you can use a sentinel value as in your book. X not equal 0, while X not equal to 0, the following statement will be executed or repeated. Let's try it again. Debug, start without debugging. Okay. Sorry, not equal to -1. To -1. Okay. Let's try to enter some grades, 15, 95. Once you enter -1, here your code will be terminated or your loop will be terminated, since the value you entered is a sentinel value for this kind of loop. Okay. Now let's try some exercise from our last tutorial or last assignment. If you need calculate the average or sum for your grade, how can we use the Sentinel loop in order to calculate sum and average of your grades? Okay. First, you need to declare two variables, one for sum and initialize sum is equal to 0, and one for average. Average is a float variable. Average equation is equal sum over n. Okay, sum over. Okay, guys. Once you divide a variable by another variable, let's say your result will be a float number, a decimal number. In this case, you will declare average as a float variable. Okay. Also, you need a counter to count how many number you entered in order to calculate the average. Okay. Let's say n is the number of element or number of grades, and we initialize n by 0. Okay. Now we will enter the first grade, import your grade, scanf and grade. Once you enter first grade, we will calculate the sum directly. Sum equal sum plus x. Okay. After each grade entered, you will increment n by 1, n plus plus. This loop will be repeated until you enter a number -1 to end this loop. -1 to end, let's say end. Okay. And to run your code, debug, start without debugging. First value is 15, second value is 20. Let's say -1, the program will be terminated. Okay. You can after loop to print the sum. Sum. Okay. Debug. Start debugging. Let's try some grades. Let's say 15, 15, 15, -1. Okay. Your sum is equal to 44. Here we have a technical problem. Your -1, your last value of a grade -1 is calculated with sum. How can we fix this problem? In this situation, you need to input x before while loop. You need to input x before while loop here. Okay. If this value is equal to -1, you will do the following. You will do the summation. Sum plus equal x. Before you go to check condition is true or false, here you need to input another grade. Input another grade. Okay, let's try it again. We have 15 minus 1. Your result is correct, is 45. Once you have the value of sum, therefore you can calculate the average for the following grade. How can we calculate the average? You can say printf average equal f sum over n. Okay, and it's the counter for how many grade you entered. You have entered. Let's try it again. 15 minus 1. You have a sum equal 45 and average equal 0. Why 0? Also, we have a technical problem. Okay, which is here. The variable sum is an integer variable. N is an integer variable. Int integer over integer, you will get an integer result. How can you fix this problem? Simply by convert one of the following variables. How we can convert sum to float or n to float? We will use a technique called casting. Okay. The easiest way is to multiply sum by 1.0 or to multiply n by 1.0. In this case, the variable, this results will be float. Okay, float over integer, you will get an result float. Also, in this situation, we have a technical problem. You need to be careful when you calculate a decimal values. Start without debugging. Let's try same minus 1. Sum is equal to 45. Average is equal to 15.0. Okay. This is how we can use a Sentinel while loop, and as we said before, the Sentinel loop is used for unknown number of repetitions. Okay. Now we are gonna to introduce or to discuss another topic called tracing. Tracing we can do trace for the following codes. You will describe the sequence or the behavior of the hardware of your computer, such as two essential components such as memory and the screen. Okay, let's say in tracing computation, you will specify a memory section, okay, and screen section. In order to display and show uh, the execution of your code in the background, you will do a tracing mechanism. In the memory section, you will list your variables. Our variables was x, n, sum, and average, AV. Okay, and you will display how this variable changes in the background. By default, x is equal to 0, n equal to 0, sum is equal to 0. Once you run your program will ask the user to input your grade. This message will be displayed on the screen. Input your grade. Okay, -1 to end, etc. In our example, we input 15 as a grade value. Once you input 15, this value will be assigned to variable x. In memory, x will be 15. Okay. Now, x not equal to -1, your program will check if this value for x not equal to -1, it's true. So this condition will return a true value, and the following statement will be executed. Sum equals sum plus x. Sum equal to 0 plus 15. The result will be 15. And plus plus, you will increment n by 1. Printf. This statement will affect the screen. You will show another input, your grade message, or another grade. Let's say another grade. Okay. As in our previous example, we input another 15. So this x will be 15 again. 15 not equal -1, true. This code will be executed again, will be repeated. Sum equals sum plus x. 15 plus 15, 30. And plus plus, incremented by 1, 2. Printf, another grade. Okay. Also 15. Enter. X will be 15 again. Sum equals sum plus x, 45. And plus plus will be 3. Printf, another grade. Let's say, as we try in our previous example, you are finished from inputting your grade. Simply put -1 to terminate. -1, here x is -1. -1 not equal -1. This condition will return a false variable. The following block of code will be skipped and continue in the following line. Printf sum equal %d sum. On the screen, you will see sum equal the value of sum in memory. Okay, the value of in sum for sum in memory is 45. Okay. Second statement of printf average. Average is equal to sum over n. Sum 45 over n, you will get a result 15. 15.0 cents. We print %f, a float variable. Okay? So the following mechanism is called tracing, to show how your code is run or are running in the background of your computer. Okay. Thank you guys. See you next time.